Good morning from Vietnam, Coach Con. Thanks a lot for spending your evening and to join our Inside Sharing shows and enjoy the future a little bit early, right? Like we talked. So thanks a lot for joining our program.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Mark.
And I know that you already did some practice research on our program. So as usual, I want to share that in our culture, it's very honor for our audience to have our speakers sharing about them a little bit. So can you help sharing who you are and the works that you do, Coach Con?
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity, to be able to share some of this. Um, I think that my story is a story of probably many of your audience may be able to relate to. I am what I would call a citizen of the world. I am somebody who has lived on multiple continents and worked on them. And I am a first generation here in the United States immigrant, but I was born to first generation immigrants in Australia. My family, if my name didn't spill the beans, didn't give it away, is from Greece originally. And that's where I grew up. But I was born in Australia. My parents immigrated there for a better life, for an opportunity to kind of raise a family and create a better future for themselves and for their family. And at some point, like many, returned back to their homeland in Greece, and that's where I grew up. Um, and many years later, after I had fulfilled a lot of my goals, my school, my military, my college, I decided after I met my wife that we would move to the United States because this is her home, this is where she is from. So the last 26 years, I've been here in the United States, and I've chosen to make this our home together and start our life here. Now, in those many years, for the last 26 years plus additional years away, I've worked for very large corporations originally that gave me the opportunity to study a lot in the field of adult learning, human performance improvement, leadership development, organizational development, generally the place where process, organization, and people meet, those crossroads that really make a difference where organizations can thrive. After having worked for very large corporations, as big as 100,000 employees spread over 100 countries, I found myself over different time periods in 2012, through the last downturn here in the United States with the economy, I found myself finishing up with another organization that was purchased, and there was a lot of changes that made. So at that time, I started looking for my next career job in corporate environment. Unfortunately, my pursuits were not going very well, I have to admit. I think part of it is because my gray hair was starting to show, and a lot of people were a little skeptical of hiring somebody a little bit older. Um, and that summer, I had a life-changing event. My mother passed away in that summer of 2012. So coming back from Greece after seeing my family there and laying my mom to rest, I had a lot of time to think. And during that time, I had the opportunity to reach out to somebody who I had talked to about a position in corporate. And I asked them, I said, okay, you said you had a lot of work. I was wondering, how can I help you? And that person said, let's have lunch. So we had lunch together. And he asked me, he says, can you do this particular project for me? And I said, of course. So I helped him with that project. He liked it. Came back to me and says, can you do this project? I said, yes, I can. I delivered that project for him. And soon he came back to me and he says, I would like to ask you, would you be interested if I put these several projects together that I have that I need help with? If I could put these together, would you like to bid on them and get a contract? I said, absolutely. Now, at the time, I wasn't very familiar with how that worked. So I went ahead and studied and researched, established a company, which is now known as Fresh Biz Solutions, and I bid on the contract, and they became my first client. So I am what I would call accidental entrepreneur, somebody who didn't set out to start his own business, but I realized very, very quickly that people were willing to pay for my expertise as a consultant, as somebody who could add value to them, but not necessarily somebody that they wanted to be an employee, somebody who could think differently. And that gave me the opportunity now to be able to bring all of those years of experience, all of those stories and the journeys that I'd taken with large corporations into now small, medium, and even large companies that needed my particular expertise, and needed somebody that they could talk to. Even presidents need somewhere to talk. And sometimes they don't always have that place to kind of confide in and share their concerns, their fears, their frustrations. So becoming a trusted partner to these organizations, to these leaders, was a big part of how I established my company. So now, 10 plus years later, my friend, I find myself with an established company with a track record of success and having some of the best years of my career.
Wow. Thanks a lot for sharing your story in about 3 minutes time, Coach Con. and I'm sorry for what happened in 2012 and in the summer of 2012. I think that losing somebody that we love has tremendous impact in our life, and that also a big turning point for you to realize
Yeah.
what's important and make a different path in your life, right? And I want to also say congratulations on a few things. First, and why I want to say that a lot of my friends are executives. Okay, so when they got into the retiring age, there's two things that they feel regrets. The first one is they never run their own company when they was younger. All right, and the second is they always wanted to write a book, but they yet writing it. So we always try to encourage them to, you can always run your company, and it's never late to be like, a, like accidental entrepreneur or like whatever. Right? And then it's never too late to write your own book also. So there are people out there who will. Want to leverage from your knowledge, your experience, your expertise, and the things that you share. So you can always do that. So you do both. You do both, and I want to congratulate you for that. And
Thank you.
I want to bring you all the way back to when you were in Greece, or even earlier when you were in Australia, because if you look at the career-wise and the experience to be gaining through and up until this point, there's a lot of beautiful things that you've been having, you've been doing, and we want to cross-check between that versus what you dream of. One day you're going to become when you were young. So when I was young, I always fascinated with becoming an astronaut. I don't know why, but nobody in the family even have a chance to, like anything like that. But I'm always fascinated with that. Life took me to a different direction. Something that we're doing now, similarly between the two of us, is what I'm doing. And so, when you were young, Coach Khan, what did you want to become, and what did you think that you're gonna contribute to this world when you grow up, though?
Well, I have to admit, Hal, that I have been, I don't know if I'm one of the few, but I am a very lucky person. I'm very blessed in the sense that I have had multiple careers in my life, and I've had the opportunity to do things that I love deeply. Love, love, love deeply. When I was young, I realized that I had a very creative side to who I was, and I was always tinkering and trying to create things. I was always fascinated by a lot of the arts, if you will. So when I had the opportunity after my military service, I actually decided that I wanted to go into performing arts. So I actually studied, my educational background fell originally into teaching performing arts. So not only was I able to go ahead and appreciate and work in the performing arts on stage, on theatrical and live performances on TV, but also at the same time study the educational part. How do we teach those skills to others? Both of those areas I loved. I was fascinated. So I had over more than about 10 plus years of a career working in Greece in TV productions and stage productions and doing a lot of that kind of work that really gave me an opportunity to be in front of the camera and be able to do a lot of wonderful work and meet some amazing, amazing people. What I didn't realize, is that along the way, life would take me in a different direction, and it would give me an opportunity to study the business side of things and realize how much I enjoy the teaching aspect and working with people and embracing the changes in my life, and then becoming an expert in change leadership and being able to apply that into a business context to help organizations and individuals. All I did was trade one stage for a different stage. And now we find ourselves behind yet another camera here, my friend. Or when we present in front of a group of people, that's a place where now we can communicate and impact people's lives, perhaps not through our emotion, but through our speech and through other things and the stories that we share.
Wow. Coach Con, I want to bring you to the point where you transform from this stage of like performing arts onto the stage of developing people and leadership. What happened back then that moved you from one space to the next, though?
Well, that's an interesting thing because at some point, my body was not able to keep up anymore with a lot of those things, the demands, the physical demands of being on stage and performing. So there was an opportunity when I moved to the United States with my wife to look at a different career. And because, like I mentioned to you, I lived on 3 different continents, been to 4, and worked in a number of different avenues or situations where it put me in front of the travel and tourism branch of business. Greece is very well known for its tourism. So for us, it's very familiar to be in an environment that we work with tourism as a business and travel. And having traveled myself quite a bit, I found myself applying for a position with a company that did travel. And that's where I started my corporate career. And I grew as the company grew and the opportunities came. And through that time, I was able to manage not just the training for my particular office, but I took over about 12 different offices and had responsibility for the training departments in those areas. And then over the course of time, became less of a training manager or training director, if you will, and much more of a lead consultant within the organization, dealing with performance improvement opportunities and kind of inside consulting within the corporations, which was a huge opportunity for me to meet senior leaders, to work with them, to solve problems for the company, and to really be in a position where I was being offered opportunities to study not just leadership development or different training programs, but programs that had to deal with emotional intelligence, with personality types, with Myers-Briggs, DISC, all the different leadership programs that we have come to know and understand, with Six Sigma, with performance improvement and human performance technology principles, all of those different things that one by one I was putting these tools into my toolkit, and I realized at some point that I had a lot of this experience that would allow me to really make a difference for the organization.
So what is that in this field that makes you happy and stay for that for so long, Coach Con?
Well, there are very few things that I don't know if that's for everybody, but for me personally, being able to impact somebody's life because you're impacting the way that they're thinking and they're seeing the view, seeing that light bulb go on and say, I see it. All of a sudden, you've expanded their mind, you've expanded their universe, and now they are no longer the same person. They have the opportunity now to do something, because I tell people I don't teach for the sake of teaching. I teach so I can impact people's thinking, and they can then change their behavior so they can then get better results. That's why I do what I do. And seeing people being able to make those changes in their life professionally, personally, there are very few things that excite you that much, my friend. And that keeps me going. That is my calling. When I look back and I look at my purpose in life, I realize that I have been put on this earth to be able to coach and teach and impact people that way. That is why I'm here. That is my purpose.
Well, I admire the work that you do and the purpose that you have for yourself, and I mean that teaching people and helping people change is one of the very rewarding feelings and profession that we could do. At the same time, it's also have a lot of challenges, because we can see the talent, the potential in the people, but we don't see that, that reaping the benefit of that or realizing the potential within themselves. Sometimes it takes us a lot of frustrations and stuff. So in Asia, we have a culture, we have a old saying that, when the people ready, the teacher will show, right? I believe in the reverse way that the teacher has to show to help the people to realize and to have the belief, and your job as the trainer is as a co-consultant that helping people to realize very important to start from your ends first. So for that many years, what how can you give you the energies to go through the roller coaster of the emotions to continue carrying that path?
Well, I love to teach, Ha,
Mm,
because I love to learn. And
mm,
to me, every time I engage, whether it's one on one with an individual or if it's a group through coaching, through training, through workshops, I learn as much as hopefully they learn from me.
mm,
I learn so much about people, about their work, about their cares, about what excites them, about what scares them. I am a student as much as I am a teacher, my friend. And that's why I do what I do, because I continue to grow. I continue to learn myself. And the more I learn, the more it excites me to keep going in that direction. Because the more I give, the more I get. It's a self-fulfilling. It fills my batteries in such an amazing way.
mm. Wow, thanks for sharing that. Because sometimes a lot of us put ourselves as a teacher and forgot the learning part of doing the job, right? And the learning part is the one that's very important to keep us moving into and then moving and growing and thriving. So and make us a better teacher, right?
Very much. I mean, the difference between the pedagogy of teaching a small child something that they have never seen, something that they don't know, you are truly teaching them something that is brand new to them. When you work in an andragogy with an adult learning environment, adults come to the table, they already have a history. If you and I sit down, you are not starting from zero. You are starting with a history of your own. There are so many things that you already know. My job is to ask the right questions, to get you thinking, and how can we build on what you already know? And that is the power of an adult learning environment. I'm not here to tell you that you know nothing and we need to start from zero. I'm here to say, let's find out what you already know that's useful in this situation, and let's build on that.
Wow.
Let's grow from that standpoint. You and I, as partners, are growing together.
Wow, wow. And that is the power of asking questions. Right? And I earlier you mentioned about a friend of you asking you a question, are you able to do this? And you was saying yes, and then jump into the opportunity, and that eventually create your your business, fresh business or solutions. And I see from you is the not only the power of asking questions, but the power of reaping the opportunity when it comes by keep saying yes and then figure out the answer later on, try to master it at the end. Right? So, how did you build up that capability for yourself, Coach Con?
Well, part of it is when growing up the way that I did, with all of the different challenges that the environment had. I mean, I come from very humble beginnings with my family. They are people that had very little education growing up, and they were looking for the opportunities. I was the first one in my family to finish high school, to go on to college, the first one. And in many ways, I didn't, they weren't able to support me by showing me what they already knew, but they were able to support me by encouraging me to become the best version of myself. They wanted me to have more opportunities than they did. So I stood there with their help, and I was excited about all those things. Greece, very much like Vietnam, has been through its ups and downs in the economy. And we realize that we have to work hard. We have to chase things. If we want something to happen, we have to make it happen sometimes. We have to approach it. And I've always maintained that positive attitude because I have that belief in myself. I have the belief when I surround myself with the right people that I will find the support that I need. And I have the belief that there is always an answer. I may not like it, but there is always an answer, my friend.
and Coach Con, with that mentality, you will never fail. There are always opportunity abundant out there. Just we have to look for it. We have to approach them, and then we have to like make it happen for us, right? Not waiting for things to happen to us, but make it happen. And I want to go to the next is the book that you wrote, right? So you and Dr. Elia was writing a book together. Tell us about that journey, though.
Well, there was another example of making it happen, my friend. So, Dr. Ilya and I, who's been a guest on your show previously, and for anybody that has not had the opportunity to hear him, he is wonderful and he is full of wisdom. And I encourage them to go back to your archives and look at that episode. But Dr. Ilya, also known as the Happiness Doctor, and I have been very, very good friends. Part of what brought us together outside of our support for each other and helping each other and being a sounding board for each other is that we started writing together. So we started writing together for articles for different publications. And we were on a very positive point in both of our businesses independently, but also working together. And then March 2020, here in the United States, in mid-March, when everything shut down due to COVID, Dr. Ilya approached me after a few days of us looking around and saying, okay, what are we going to do now? Because much of our work depends on us being able to go to client sites or be able to present. I mean, we had workshops, we had presentations already scheduled, things that a lot of these clients had to put on hold because they were unsure about what we were able to do. So he approached me and he says, between our backgrounds and our histories, obviously Dr. Ilya has his background is in psychology, so he has his PhD in psychology, and he is very well versed in like mental first aid as far as emotional first aid for disaster recovery. I've had my experiences with a lot of those areas as far as dealing with change and tragedies, both personally and professionally. And over the many years that I've been dealing with transformational change for organizations, we came together and put our heads together, and within 45 days, we wrote the book and we published it. So from mid-March to the end of April, by the time we hit May, we had published our book because we felt that there was a need out to help people. We realized that people were looking for answers. Everybody was dealing with the physiological aspects of the virus and how this pandemic was escalating and the statistics and the numbers. But what people didn't take in mind is mentally, emotionally, how this was impacting people. And nobody was providing the answers to help people be able to cope in practical ways, emotionally and mentally, with this amount of change all of a sudden. Because it wasn't just the pandemic. I mean, you have the pandemic as one crisis, the financial pause, everything shut down all of a sudden. People were like, okay, what do I do now for a living? So that's the second crisis. Progressively, people started resisting. There was out in the streets, there was a lot of social unrest. People were out in the streets trying to figure things out and fighting for their rights one way or the other way. But then we also had the mental problems that were happening, especially here in the United States. We had a pandemic in mental health that was right under the surface that people didn't realize how bad it was. Over those first few months, there were 1,000%, 1,000%, so 100 times. Look at that. Say there was such an increase in the number of calls to crisis centers with people saying, I can't cope with this. I can't deal with this emotionally. So you're looking at a lot of this situation. These weren't people that had chronic problems, or these were people that all of a sudden were snapping. They were struggling mentally to be able to cope with this emotionally. So getting our book out quickly was important to us to be able to provide insights and help to people. So we spent that first year promoting the messages in the book to help people on podcasts like yours, where you have an audience of people that are willing to listen and want to understand. They're looking for answers. So we hopefully provided, especially that first year, answers to people at a personal level on how to cope with this.
Wow.
Now, the second year beyond that, it was interesting. So let me share a little bit of the story and the progression, if I may. Is that okay?
Please, please, please.
So that first year, we spent the year promoting the book, and we were talking about that and helping people personally. The interesting thing is many of those people are business leaders, they're team leaders, they're entrepreneurs, they have their own groups and organizations that they lead. And they came to me, many of them, and said, hey, Coach Khan, I understand that this helps me personally, but how can I help my team? How can I help my organization? And what we quickly realized is that the 7 keys that we put out there on how to deal with a crisis are essentially a roadmap to build resilience individually. But that same roadmap can be applied to an organization. So the second year, I spent all this time trying to build organizational resilience now within teams and helping them apply those same principles to their teams, to their organizations. So it's been a fascinating ride. So as we went international, we published our book in Greece, and we were able to get the message out now to Europe and to other places. We were able now to talk at a higher level to executives, to business leaders, and say, okay, hey, you need answers, here we go. Let's talk it. Let's put it through this framework, these 7 keys, and let's help you get your team back on track.
Wow. I think that that was everything started a very noble purpose to have the people to navigate through the crisis in their life, and it put you guys even back then. You guys also have a lot of crisis for your personal life and the business
Yeah.
also. But then you put everything in 45 days to come up with a framework that can help individual to really really valuable for them to read, to realize, and to apply it in their life so that they can navigate through the change and manage the emotional part of that and the practical side of the change so that they can get out strongly, build resilience. And you see that simple action create a lot of ripple effects to a lot of people, and now it can go to the next level. All started one good intention of creating, and again, this is a story that you say, like you have to go after that, you have to make it happen. This is something that you guys make it happen. Thanks for doing that, Coach Con. Okay? And so, is there anything exciting that you and Dr. Elia is doing together to, like that you want to share with us in advance now?
Sure. Well, there's work that we do together. We continue to work through the principles of our book, and each one of us now has kind of taken on through the evolution, if you will, of the messaging. For me, it's much more, I work on a corporate level with organizations, with teams, and working on what this next normal looks like for them, as many of them are trying to find answers about how does my workplace evolve now, preparing a lot of the organizations that I work with to be able to embrace that next normal, to design the future workplace for themselves, and how they want to operate going into this next stage, because we're not going back. What we had before is gone. Now we need to be able to move forward. And the best way to predict the future is to create it, to make it happen. We keep coming back to that statement. So with many of the leaders that I work with, I ask them, bring your people to the table, sit down together, leadership and employees, sit down together, and let's design how we're going to move forward. How can we keep the best of what we want to do and move forward together in a way that makes sense for us, so everybody can win from this. But it requires a change in mindset. It requires us to be able to think very differently, because even through the pandemic, when people were working from home and all these different things were happening, you cannot operate the same old way that you did your leadership. You just can't. You have to be much more on board. It's what I call, you need to embrace the leadership paradox in today's world. There is a higher demand on leaders right now. Let me explain a little bit, if I may, some of the story here. So in 2021, and well, even before that, during the pandemic in 2020, Gallup continues to do a lot of their studying, a lot of their research into employee engagement. Right after the pandemic, when everything shut down in March, in April and May, they did a spot check. They did one of those tests and say, okay, how engaged are people? At that time, they found that employees were at one of the highest levels of engagement that Gallup had ever recorded, at 38%. Now, fast forward, by the time we came down to November 2020, that number had dropped to one of the lowest, 31%.
Wow.
What was the difference? The difference was that in the beginning, people embraced that. They wanted to be engaged for two reasons. One, I think, was because they wanted to show that they had value. They didn't want the company to let them go. So they wanted to show that they could work from anywhere. And the second thing was they didn't have anything else to do. They were stuck at home. So they wanted to do something that would help them think normally and feel like things were somewhat normal. But over the next 8, 9, 10 months, by the time we got to the end of the year and then beyond, those numbers dropped. Why? Because managers, leaders, supervisors were not prepared to manage their teams, to lead their teams from this distance. They weren't aware of how to adapt to this new environment. So in 2021, when Gallup did their research again and they did their surveys about employee engagement, they found that the trend that was going up for 10 years more as far as employee engagement, all of a sudden was reversed and it started dropping. A big part of that was because the change in the circumstances. We started seeing a lot of those things where people were checking out. They weren't engaging as much. They didn't have connection to their teams and to their leaders. And so the two groups that were impacted the most in disengagement, one was people in healthcare at 12%. And that's no surprise. They were burnt out from dealing with all of the crises in the hospitals. But the group that was second to them at 7% drop were the leaders, managers, people in management. Why? Especially because those middle managers didn't know where to go, how to engage. They were left out there not knowing how to do this. So part of what I've been working on all this time is to help re-engage leaders and engage their people, to bring back that passion to the job in this new workplace and help them adapt to this new environment. And part of it is engaging in this leadership paradox. Let me give you an example, Ha.
Please.
You and I are now on the opposite sides of the world, are we not?
Yeah, we are.
Do you feel like we're having a warm, very personal conversation? We're sharing stories that are very personal to us?
I do. Do you?
So we are connecting. Yes, so we are connecting, but we are across the globe. What we're looking at is we're using high-tech technology to create high-touch, high personal connection. High-tech, high-touch, two opposite ideas that we are taking now and bringing them together. We're taking that paradoxical approach, those two opposites, and synthesizing them. And now, as a leader, I need to be able to do that. If you and I are on the same team, Ha, and I look at you and I say, you know what? I need to work with Ha. I need to understand that Ha may be sitting at a kitchen table with his child next to him that has to study for school on his or her laptop, on his papers. Meanwhile, Ha may need to take care of other responsibilities. Perhaps you have an aging parent upstairs. Perhaps it's your turn to cook or to do something else at the house. You have all these things that you have to do. And as a leader, I need to be able to understand and have empathy for your situation. Yes?
Yep.
So empathy on one hand. Now, on the other hand, I need to acknowledge that you may have spent all this day taking care of everybody else, and you said, you know what? At 10 o'clock at night, I'm going to sit down when everybody is asleep, and I'm going to work on my project. I'm going to do my job until midnight, 1, 2 in the morning. And then at 6 a.m. next day, you have to get up and do it all over again. So as a leader, I need to be able to have empathy, yes, but on the other hand, I need to be able to show tough love to you and set clear boundaries to protect you and the organization. I don't want you burning out because you have to operate this way. So I have to adjust now the priorities, and I have to say, here are the 2 or 3 things that I need you to accomplish this week. When you get them done, understand it. But I want you to focus on this. Everything else is a plus, is a bonus. But these are the 2 or 3 things that I will expect you to get done. So rather than as a leader in the old school, me managing your outputs, meaning how many hours are you on the computer? How many hours were you on the phone? How many hours were you doing in your seat? I need to look at them saying, what are the results that I need you to get? And then allow you the opportunity to get them, to protect you from all that stuff. Empathy, tough love, another paradox that I have to be able to work with.
Wow. And then the combination of empathy and tough love is not easy to mix in between, because
No.
sometimes we so empathetic, and then we're not going to give the people the direction and the tough love that they need to do. And then if we gave them the
Exactly.
tough love, then they might be perceiving that I'm not a empathetic leader also. So where can we find the balance between the two that can come in smooth, and people understanding and follow them?
Well, that's the interesting thing, because it's not a simple answer of you have to do 50-50. It's never just that, because it's a constantly moving thing. I explain it to people. If we try to find a balance by saying, I'm going to spend half here and half there, that doesn't work, because that's not real life. Life does not work with straight lines. If we look at nature, if we look at everything in life, there are no straight lines in nature. We look at that. And I explain it to people that if you have a straight line and you are in the ER, that's not a good thing. You want your line to be going up and down.
Yep.
So to me, being alive, being vibrant means that I have to constantly be conscious and purposeful in the things that I'm doing. I can't do it just once. I can't connect with you one time and leave it at that. I have to connect with you ongoing. So in this effort for us to continue to work with a lot of these things, so for example, I do this work myself, Dr. Ilya does his part. Together we work in challenge format, which you've become a little bit more aware of with these challenges that we do. So Dr. Ilya and I have developed challenges to help people transition, to help people find their resilience and be able to become more resilient in what they're doing. And then many of them decide that, hey, we'd like a little bit more to work with you. So they come to me or Dr. Ilya and say, can you coach us? Can you work with us to increase our resilience, our ability to cope, or our leadership skills, or in my case, that paradox that I'm trying to build? Because all of that is about synthesis. It's about integration. It's about bringing it together. When I coach, for example, executives, one of the biggest challenges they have, and I'm sure you've seen it in your work as well, in dealing with them, with supporting them and working with them, it's this constant battle that they feel that they have to have between their work and their life. This work-life balance, as many people say. But again, it should never be a flat line. 50-50 doesn't work for everybody. Sometimes there are going to be situations where you need to spend more time in your business, in your work, to push through this project, or because you're launching something. And sometimes you're going to have to spend more time with your family because they need you. But work and life are not two separate things. You and I come from cultures that we understand work is part of our life. It's an important part of our life, because that's how we bring value to our families, to our communities, and we give back through our contribution, through our work. But it's part of our life. It's not a separate thing that should be put on a scale that we balance and we look at it and say, okay, I put 5 on here, I put 10 on here, and I go back. So when I coach people, I coach about how to make their whole self better when they are happy as a whole person. Because I can't coach somebody that works 9 to 5, for example, and say, okay, we'll fix that, but the rest doesn't matter. If you're not happy at home, if you're not happy with your life, you're not going to be successful in your work.
Absolutely, it's an integration between the work and life. It's not a balance point where we need to look for the check-in where to find the balance, right? And Coach
Exactly.
Juan, a lot of our audience executives and HR professionals, and you know tell them why should they get the service from you, Coach Khan. What is that you can help them to make the impact in their organizations?
Thank you. That's a great question. It's a question that I find myself answering, and with a lot of people that ask me what I do, because for many of them it's hard to kind of understand. So I explain, the best way that I explain it to people is that I say how most companies that you and I know have paid a lot of good money, have a lot of excellent leaders that put together some wonderful business plans. They put their strategies together, they have their vision, their mission, their values that they want as a company. They say, okay, we are going to go out and do this. This is our 5-year strategic plan, for example. But if they don't have the right people in their organization to take those plans and make them real, those plans are not worth anything.
Yep.
They are just plans. They are just paper on the shelf. What I do is I help my clients, I help organizations develop the kind of leadership talent that they need and make sure it's ready so they can then take those plans and make them real. So essentially creating leaders throughout the organization from top to bottom and helping them do that. Now, sometimes that means, for example, executive coaching with the leadership, senior leadership team, and helping them craft their messaging or where they're going or how they can be at their best for their organization. Many times it might be group coaching or workshops like leadership development workshops or interpersonal skills or handling conflict or project management, whatever the need is for the organization from a competency standpoint, so we can develop those skills in the people. Sometimes it's working with them on engaging that workforce or making sure that that commitment is there, because sometimes people can do the job, but they don't always want to. So how do we get them engaged so they can want to do a good job? And then finally, a big part of this is creating the systems and the processes so people can actually be at their best. So there is a system that allows us to identify who is the talent within our organization? What do they need? How do we develop the right reward systems or the right career path? And from the organizational standpoint, to be honest with you, how do we make sure that we constantly have enough good people ready to step into these jobs? So if I promote Ha tomorrow, do I have somebody to fill his spot? Because if I don't, I can't promote him. And I constantly need to have a steady flow of talent. So my job is to make sure that I work with the senior leadership team to make sure that everybody is ready, they're in the right place, and we are constantly developing people, because it's never a straight line, it's never static. But we are constantly working within the changes of our organization to make sure that we have the talent ready to step in and do the things that we need them to do so they can be right for our customers, for our business, because we need them to be.
Wow. Thanks a lot for sharing that. And absolutely, right now around the world, we all face with the talent shortage, right? So make sure that we have the right kind of people under the right kind of program to help them to engage, to perform, and to excel at what they do will be a big fight between organizations, and for us to solve the current problem. I will go to the last question for our conversation today, Coach Khan, and this is again is all about you. So my wife and I have been on the quest to look for ways that we can help people to improve their ability to think, because to us thinking is the big part that can help us to grow, right? And every chance that we got to talk to experts like you, we will ask this question: How is that Coach Khan's doing, so that you can expand your ability to think?
To me, I'm gonna answer this in a kind of a backward way. I'm gonna share one more story with you a little bit, if I may.
Sure.
Part of why they call me Coach Khan is because, not just because I coach executives, but because I coach young children. I coach soccer in my community here, in the place where I live. And I love coaching young kids because they are the future for us. They are the opportunity for us to be able to see that leadership grow. And even with the young kids, when I'm working with them, in so many ways, I teach them how to think by asking the right questions. If you ask good questions, you will find good answers. Many of these people, whether they are young student athletes or they are executives, a lot of times to get them to think, we need to ask the right questions. And as coaches, as developers, that is our job. It's our job to prompt, to prime the pump, to ask those questions, to get them thinking. Why? Why? When are you going to do that? How are you going to approach that? What is important to you? Asking those questions a lot of times and not allowing them to just float through and go through that. We have to be asking more good questions of each other to get ourselves to think.
Wow, thanks a lot for sharing the power of asking questions. Absolutely, that is the top love that we give to them, and that but the best love is to have them to realize the asset by themselves, right? And come to the action plan all by themselves. So, Coach Kong, thanks a lot for joining our show today and sharing your stories and sharing the advices and the works that you do also. We really appreciate that. We admire all of the journey that you've been having, and we hope that our audience out there, if they see them and your expertise, your experience, we're adding value to their operations, then they can come to you, Coach Kong, and inviting you to take part of their growth journey. So thanks a lot for joining our program, Coach Kong.
I so appreciate the invitation, and the opportunity to have this honest and heartfelt conversation as two people that our mission together is to help these organizations, to help the individuals in these organizations, and to help the teams as a whole. And I am so happy and honored to be connected with you because I know you do such a magnificent job out in your homeland in Vietnam and in the broader area out there in Southeast Asia. So keep doing what you're doing, and anytime we can support each other, you know where to find me.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. If you guys ever travel to Vietnam, let me know. So my wife and I will be so honored to take you guys around town. Okay.
That would be our pleasure and our honor. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, my friend. Have a wonderful evening. Bye for now.
Bye.